The button has been hit, Shane.
Oh, we're live. Oh my God. It's Manic and Chill. It's our second ever live episode. This time we're going to stream to YouTube though. So people can actually ask us questions and we can see them because apparently last time we got questions and we were unaware of it. I was also completely unaware that anyone was watching it. But in case you don't know, I'm Shane at Shane is the worst. He's Scott at Charles Chill FFB. Together, we're Manic and Chill. I'll let you figure out who's who if you haven't watched us before. He's the host of Dynasty and Chill. I am a co-host of Dynasty Trades HQ, and we're both co-hosts of Dynasty Trades in 5. So subscribe to that YouTube channel too if you have 5 minutes and like talking about trades, because we do.
And Dynasty Pandemic. Join
Dynasty
that.
Pandemic, yeah, we chatted up in there as well.
And then how can you forget the Black Friday sale from DLF? 30% off on a whole year. You get all the tools, the ADP, the trade finder, all of our sparsely written articles. You get a lot of stuff. You should probably check it out. If you're going to make one Black Friday purchase, forget going to Best Buy or Amazon, anything on Amazon. Come on, let's feed the little guy here. Let's try a DLF subscription. How about that, Shane? 30% off.
I looked on Amazon to see if they had any sales on fantasy football websites. Definitely don't. Definitely don't.
Yeah. All right. Well,
what's your favorite
we're live.
Tool? What's your favorite tool on DLF?
My favorite tool. Let's see. I mean, if I just wanted to talk about the tools that I use the most, it would be definitely the trade analyzer and the ADP. I think a lot of people just pay for the DLF ADP, honestly. They just want to have a pulse of what the ADP looks like. You also get different types of ADP. You get rookie ADP, Superflex ADP. You get all the Devy rankings too. That's another thing. You get the composite Devy rankings from all of our Devy rankers. So that's usually what I use. I probably am less frequently using a lot of the tools. I bet you if I went through for about an hour, I would rediscover things that I kind of knew were there, but I didn't really use all that much. I guess you can go because I'm not really doing our tools any favor. I just did, I don't use. There's so much stuff going on. I can't say I use them all the time. It's very infrequent.
Well, I'm going to say I use the trade finder roughly once a day. Which is probably a little too much. But yeah, I use the trade finder. I don't use a trade analyzer because I have my own propriety in my head tool that I use that no one can beat, even as much as I love DLF. But my brain is the ultimate trade tool. But I love using the trade finder to find trades. Hey, we got some questions. So Ridley Truther says, "What's up, boys? DLF Premium was a game changer for me for real. The trade analyzer and finder is fire. It is. I like using snap counts too, because snap counts are good to look at to understand. Hey, is this guy at least getting on the field? I don't know, say a player like Clyde Edwards, great snap count. Not anything else, but great snap count."
Yeah, we got another question. We got a tweet question too that we sent out earlier today, but we'll go with this one first. JT All Day says Mike Williams, Kareem Hunt. I assume that's Devontae Freeman.
Got to be Devontae Freeman
for Javonte Williams in Dynasty. What do you think?
Well,
no other context. I would always be how many starters, what's the format, all that kind of stuff, but with no other context. In a vacuum, what do you say?
No other context. I want Javonte. I like Williams. I like Hunt. Freeman's going to have absolutely no value in about 4 weeks. 4 weeks? Is that about when the playoffs start? 5 weeks, 6 weeks, whatever. And I'm always going to look for the higher asset player on the one side, which is going to be Javonte, because some folks have him in as like the top 5 Dynasty running backs already. People love Javonte, something fierce.
Yeah, I've seen some people have him like RB5, RB6. I think the one thing with Javonte, which is very rare at running back, you're going to be able to guarantee yourself insulation for the next at least 8 to 10 months with him before the start of next season. Like he's one of the few running backs where you're not going to say we hit the offseason and he's going to be tougher to move or his perceived value is going to go down. All these other guys that are currently occupying the top 15, top 20 in ADP other than Swift, Taylor, Najee Harris, maybe Gibson, maybe Dobbins. Like those guys, their value is probably going to hold, if not go up a little bit, just because it's a little depressed. But like then you have Javonte. Like his value is going to stay or go higher, whereas everybody else, Dalvin, Kamara, Barkley, McCaffrey, all those guys, it's going to be hard for them to hold their value just because they gain another year. And you know how people are with running backs. And what do we talk about every time? Oh my gosh, I have Kamara and he has a great game. Like you're just praying that he has another good game and he doesn't get hurt and miss the last month like he has. You know what I mean? Like
I don't even want to talk about Kamara. I might have traded for him in my most important league, which is the HQ1 league. And I've gotten to play him once, which is the same amount of times I would have gotten to play Barkley if I didn't make the trade. But I got James Robinson out of it. So at least there's that.
Well, and it's just the principle of, if you're holding, how many times have we talked about this? Hey, we've talked about this on Dynasty Trades in 5. We do an episode on Dalvin Cook, or we do an episode on, Joe Mixon. It's like, yeah, they had a great game. They're the RB5 on the season. I just pray that I can trade him for, I would love to deal him for a package that has Javonte Williams. You know what I mean? Like anything I can get out of that fragility on my roster, I'm doing it. So yeah, I think if you can acquire Javonte, you're buying him here essentially because you're getting him for 2 semi-decent pieces, but probably pieces that aren't going to go up in value a ton. And you're getting somebody that's insulated. You have a much more movable asset. Now, you're probably going to lose, I would say, the production the rest of the year, most likely. You know what I mean? I kind of rather have Hunt and Mike Williams in a redraft league. Just if all it mattered is the next 4 weeks, I'd probably rather have him. But,
it depends on who you're going to slide in there, right? Because I think Javonte, we could see a situation like they are coming off a bye, right? And generally when teams are going to make changes or they're going to let a rookie get more run, it's going to be after a bye because God knows you can't actually watch tape or anything like that until the bye week because there's just so much going on. So they might decide that this is the week that they're like, all right, Javonte needs to get 20 touches a week. Like this is just ridiculous. Gordon's not terrible, not by any means. Javante's just better and he's more explosive and he didn't fumble his last game. So I like that risk. And then, depending on what wide receiver you're sliding in there, I don't know that you're going to lose that much from Mike Williams.
No, that's true. And Hunt's coming off an injury. They have a bye next week, so it's a little risky. He says he's coming back. It's a little risky to probably play him this week. You don't know. You probably got to put him in there just given the running back landscape. But, I get it. I can see both sides. And actually, the Broncos, this is actually a good matchup for them against the Chargers. You can run on the Chargers. So this is a matchup you could see the Javonte breakthrough game. Even though I think it's probably just going to be both him and Melvin Gordon have good games. It could be the Javonte breakthrough game. Who knows?
Honestly, Javonte hasn't needed a ton of touches to produce. I wish I was quicker at this. I was going to look up his stats, but he's had multiple games where he's crushed it over at least 10 points. Let's look him up. I know it's not good radio. Boom.
Well, and just something to add to that, and while you're looking it up, I think we also make the assumption that Javonte's had like 45% of the workload so far when you factor in the total touches. He's been less involved in the passing game than Melvin Gordon in a lot of different games too. But I think we just assume that Melvin Gordon is going to go away and Javonte is just going to get double the work that he is now. I think that's a little bit of a flawed assumption. You don't want him to get 24 carries a game and 2 receptions. You know what I mean? Like you want him to maintain the efficiency that he has. He doesn't need Melvin Gordon just to completely go away, just to cede like 10 to 20% of Gordon's touches his way, which probably comes in the form next year. Somebody else, you know what I mean? A 30% guy instead of a 50% guy in his backfield, he'll be fine. He can be an RB1.
Yeah, and let's hope that some of those touches are targets and not just empty calorie rushing yards where, a guy like Tony Jones gets 11 rushes and attempts yesterday and he scored you one fantasy point. Is that what he scored you? 1.1 fantasy point? Not great.
Well, let me ask you this, because I think this seeds the conversation a little bit onto Javonte. I know we didn't plan on talking about this, but the Broncos have a lot of mouths to feed, right? Now they do. People kind of crap on Albert O, but he's a solid backup tight end that unfortunately for fantasy is going to get like 2 or 3 targets at least a game. You know what I mean? Just because he's one of the more athletic players out there. So you have him, Fant, Patrick, Sutton, Judy. Now Javonte, let's say their quarterback's Russell Wilson. Doesn't check down to running backs.
No.
Does that worry you a little bit that maybe we're going to Say they
No.
somehow get Russell Wilson. Does it worry you about Javonte's value being, if he's going for top 5 RB prices to where you can trade him for any receiver in Dynasty? Are you out? Even though he has this extreme insulation on what could be a really good offense, you think he'll be overvalued if he gets into the top 4, top 5 running backs?
Top 4, top 5 is such a scary area, and I'm again getting burned on running backs, and I'm starting to hate them and not want to have any running backs on my roster, especially ones that I could flip for a wide receiver. But taking out my own personal pain, man, top 4 or top 5 is too high. It's too high for him. I'd flip him immediately if someone's going to give me that. Because, like, if I could make a trade where someone this time next year, someone's like, oh, I'll give you Jamar Chase for him, he's gone. You know, if someone's like, I'll give you, obviously, Justin Jefferson, A.J. Brown, he's gone. And just looking up Marshawn Lynch real quick, he was fine with Russell Wilson. I think would be okay. He had 16.2. He averaged somewhere between 16.2 and 18.9 in 4 straight seasons. So Russ Wilson didn't hurt him too much. He okay reception wise, 36, 37 was his high. I think Javonte could get up to 40 just because he's a better receiver.
Yeah, I think it comes down to, we don't maybe have the concerns about Javonte the player, but just from a value principle, I'm going to give you the names ahead of Javonte in the ADP, and you tell me in 3 months, just give me a yes or no if you think this guy is going to be ahead of Javonte in terms of market value. And I'm not talking ADP. I'm talking about like in your leagues. Yeah. You and I are in over 100 leagues combined. So I think we have a pretty good pulse in terms of like, yeah, I know I probably can't trade this guy for Javonte Williams. Just because, on a large scale, I probably can't go acquire him for this guy. So let's just fast forward to February of 2022, right? The season's over. Super Bowl's done. Everyone's looking towards youth and rookie picks, and we're still 7 months away from the first game. Will you be able to trade Zeke for Javonte?
No, you're adding something in the Zeke.
Right. Nick Chubb.
Yes.
You think so?
Yeah, Nick Chubb, you should know this in the leagues that we're in. Like, there's Nick Chubb guys. Like, Nick Chubb is his own cottage industry. Like, people,
okay, fine.
Yeah, people just love Nick Chubb.
Aaron Jones.
No.
Austin Eckler.
No, because he'll be, 27? Good Lord.
Yep. Saquon Barkley.
No.
Unless he finishes out the season and smashes, but again, he's on the injury report again, so he may not have another good game all year.
Yeah, I'm assuming Saquon's never going to put together 2 healthy games since he is questionable again after playing 1 game.
Same injury concerns. Alvin Kamara.
No.
Nope, agree. I think that situation is going to be too up in the air for people to buy in when we get just to February. Maybe next season, closer to the year, it might happen, but not February. So I think you're down in the range where, like, Dalvin Cook for Javonte. Yeah. I actually think there's people that would make that swap right now because Dalvin has taken a drop off a little bit this year. He's not a massive difference maker. He's good, but he's not, RB3, RB4 level production. So I don't know if you can even get Javonte for Dalvin right now.
I would. I wish I had any Dalvin in any of my leagues because I would make that trade all day.
Yep.
And then, of course, swap Javonte for wide receivers because I'm never going to roster a running back ever again.
So now you're down to McCaffrey, maybe. Depends on how he finishes the year. I think the one thing about McCaffrey, I don't have a ton of shares. I think I have 4 shares in my 60 leagues. But I actually am more interested if he drops down outside the top 5. Maybe he gets hurt again this year. Maybe he doesn't finish off super strong. If that happens, I'm actually willing to buy back in. I think he has a higher floor longer in Dynasty just because he's so good in the receiving game. You know what I mean? Like, I think if they truly make it a point to transition him away from some of the damaging early down work, I still think he can be a top 10 running back just based off his receptions.
Yeah, I was going to say, because as much as I love DJ Moore, if they really wanted to, Christian McCaffrey would be the wide receiver 1 on that team. Just facts. I mean, he's more productive with the ball in his hands than probably any other player in the league, except for maybe Jonathan Taylor right now.
So Taylor, Harris, Swift, I think they'll be ahead of Javonte just because they're just as young and they're basically better than he is right now in terms of either volume or quality production. So, I mean, you named 5 guys, those 3 plus Nick Chubb, Christian McCaffrey. That's like really the only guaranteed ones in your opinion. Maybe we differ a little bit on a few of the others, but you're talking maybe 6 or 7 running backs you could even come to the table with and trade for Javonte when you get to February. If he goes higher than that, I do think you're now at a point where his value probably exceeds. Because if he's RB4 or RB5 in Dynasty, I'm not sure Javonte can be a top 4 running back in any given year unless his pass volume really goes up, you know?
Yeah, no, I'm out. If he reaches that value, the trade market value, I'm definitely out. Like I'm already thinking, I don't even like Najee Harris, but I'd pivot to Najee Harris and something, or I'd probably go even lower tiered than that. Like, oh my God, yeah, okay, I'll take Austin Eckler in a first for Javonte Williams because that's basically what he's headed towards.
Yep. Should be interesting to see how he finishes out the season and how some of these other guys do, because we'll see definitely some value changes once we get to the offseason and we start looking towards rookie draft seasons. Shane, we got another question. This one's from, I think it's Philip Samaniego. Hopefully I said that right. He's got a trade. I put it up on the screen. Pitts, T. Higgins, Joe Mixon, and Hollywood Brown. You give 323 firsts, 2 seconds, Tyler Boyd, and I'm assuming that's probably Nico Collins.
Oh, I'm guessing Alex. Honestly, it doesn't matter which Collins it is. It's.
I'd rather have Nico, but yeah, I mean, I guess without knowing. Well, what's your take on this? We don't know if it's super flex or not.
I'd slam accept Pitts, T. Higgins, Mixon, and Hollywood. First of all, you got 4 high-end starters that you're just adding to your roster. I don't even know how many you start. I'm hoping you start at least 10 to 11. If you start 9, then I'm going to be like, you should have, like, I still like the trade, but maybe you should have gotten one bigger asset to go with Pitts. But I still like that. 3 first, fine. I mean, the 2023 class, we know it's the unicorn class. It's the greatest class that's ever existed since 2020. But still,
2020, yep.
Yeah, it's still going to be a great class. But I know I've seen what Pitts can do, right? I know, I'm a big T. Higgins guy. Marquise Hollywood Brown is the wide receiver 8 this year. And you get Mixon, who you can immediately trade. Immediately trade Mixon. Get him off your roster. But no, I love that trade.
Yeah, I think you have multiple players here that are worth first by themselves, even if it's not a tight end premium. And we've gone back and forth on the tight end premium. If it's only 1.5 and it's start one tight end, really what you're looking for is the positional advantage rather than the point advantage, because the 1.5 is not moving the needle that much. But yeah, I mean, you have at least 3 players here that are probably worth a first itself in a super flex. In a super flex, I think I'd probably say Hollywood Brown is on the fringe of worth a first for 2023 if it's super flex, and you're still giving back like a second Boyd, maybe Nico Collins, maybe Alex Collins. But yeah, I agree with you. This is if this is non-super flex, it's an easy smash because those picks get moved up in terms of the tiers. You know what I mean? There's no quarterbacks in the way to kind of push the talent back. So not that the 23 class isn't good because it's full of good running backs and receivers, but you always want the super flex format too, because that brings 3 to 5 quarterbacks in the mix in the top 15. So it just makes the picks a little stronger down towards the bottom.
So you know what I love about this trade though, and this is generally what I try to do in all my dynasty trades, right? If I'm trading first round picks, I already know that that's one of the ways my team stays young. You still got youth on the other side of this trade though, with Pitts, T. Higgins, and Hollywood. I mean, Hollywood's the grizzled veteran at 25 there. Mixon's a running back, like I said, but it does give you production now with Mixon and Hollywood every week and Pitts here and there, but it also lets you not have to, go into next season and go, oh my God, now I have 14 players that are all over the age of 30. What am I going to do? So that was a great trade. Maybe I should send some of my trade offers to Philip and let him work on them for me. This is definitely a trade I like right up my alley.
Yeah, he posted a follow-up comment. This is a 12-team super flex, 2 running backs, 3 receivers, 2 flexes, no tight end premium. So I read that as assuming you have to start a tight end and it's a super flex. So that's a start 10. So it's a pretty cookie cutter 12-team super flex, start 10. I mean, that just kind of shows you right there, Shane, there's probably somebody in that league that's willing to give up Pitts, Higgins, Hollywood, and Mixon. They want those 23 first. You know what I mean? Yeah. That those carry a power to where
it's confusing because if you're rebuilding what the other team is, right? I'm assuming.
Why are you trading away Higgins and Pitts, right?
Well, yeah. What are you doing trading away Higgins and Pitts and Brown even? Brown's only 25. The only one that would have made sense is Mixon. And he should have gotten a first and another first for him. But, yeah, you crushed him, Philip. Feel free to show him this and then ask him gently, like, I'd love to know his thought process, because that's my favorite thing. So if he wants to jump in and let us know what his thought process was on the trade, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, I mean, I can see a mix-in for a first and Tyler Boyd and a first and a second or something, you know what I mean? Like something like that. I can see him targeting that trade to try to get a first. But yeah, trading away all that talent for essentially just a reroll. And you know how much you and I guard the 23 firsts in Superflex leagues like they're gold. You know, there's very few. I almost trade Shane. I almost won't trade 23 firsts. Period. I mean, it's really hard for me to trade them. It's crazy.
I know you'll try to get them, but
I try to get them all the time. But it's very hard for me to, like, if you really wanted to troll me, you would send me offers of like T. Higgins for a 23 first, because I know that's a fair deal. It's just very hard for me to pull the trigger on trading those picks, just because they're already valued higher than any picks have been a year and a half out from the draft than I've ever seen. And I've played Dynasty through. No, they are.
Yeah.
I've played Dynasty since 2014. I lived through the 2017 class and the 2020 class, and those picks were valued high. But I think a lot of people playing Dynasty today remember those classes, and they're going, I'm not giving up any of the picks. So,
yeah.
You know.
I got you. We
got another one. Josh Valentine. Good question here. Back to Javonte real quick, Shane.
101.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's not even about Javonte. It's the power of a 101. You basically have the entire pool of players to pick from. You have more flexibility with that pick than probably like only 4 or 5 more assets in Dynasty. So I think that you got to take the 101 in almost any class just with that flexibility. Yeah. So let's see. We had another one here. Well, this was just a comment. Ridley Truther. Got a few A.J. Brown shares in a few leagues, all out of the 21 playoffs. Superflex, 1 PPR tight end premium. Still seems to be valued as a top 5 Dino receivers. Well, first of all, Shane, is A.J. Brown still a top 5 Dynasty receiver?
He's not going to be, because we have short attention spans, and quite frankly, he's had an awful year. I mean, he's been injured just about every other game. He's out again this Sunday. And we have very short attention spans. So Jamar Chase has passed him. Justin Jefferson was probably neck and neck with him already. He's passed him. DK Metcalf is probably the one guy that he switches places with every other week, depending on who has the production. And DK had a good game. And
I think Chase, Lamb, and Jefferson are easily over A.J. Brown just because of their situations and their production thus far. I guess my question would be, right now, would you trade A.J. Brown for Stephon Diggs or Tyreek Hill? They're both 27, but they're both in like golden situations. They're in their prime. You probably get 2 or 3 years of top 5, top 6 production still left. And then they hit 30. If they last longer, then that's just golden. But I mean, it's hard for me to say it's easily A.J. Brown over those two right now, given how they've just smashed for the last year and a half, don't you think?
Yeah, in Ridley Truther's position where these teams are out of the playoffs, no, I'd hold on, because all it's going to take is 4 games of A.J. Brown being healthy again and playing, and then we go, oh, wait, this is why we loved A.J. Brown, because he gets 115 yards on 4 receptions and 2 touchdowns.
Or an offseason where there are no injuries, and all the reports are, oh, he's healthy. Last year was – he has something to prove. You can see all that narrative coming back to where he holds his value. Yeah, I agree. Let's see. Any trade packages or anything you'd be thinking with AJ? I mean, it's kind of hard to trade him away at this point, especially because he's on bye next week. He's kind of faltered a little bit, been banged up. He's not in the greatest situation. I don't think he's a guy I really target to trade away unless it's one of those very specific deals. Like, would you trade him for DJ Moore?
No.
Okay. DJ Moore and a late 22 first?
I'm getting DJ Moore in the 22 first for
This is a team that's in first place that's frustrated. They don't have AJ Brown for the next 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And they're giving you their 111 or 112. So you're probably looking at like a second round receiver in next year's class, the wide receiver 5 or 6. You take that with DJ and you'll make the swap.
Yeah, and I'm probably going to end up trading that first before the playoffs are over anyway.
AJB or Cooper Kupp in a second?
I'm still taking AJ Brown.
Okay.
I guess that could be me too, though, waiting for Cooper Kupp's bottom just to fall out because I keep expecting it, but it never seems to happen. So either side of that value wise, I can see. Personal preference, I would go with the AJ Brown side because I still think was he 24? He's
24, yep.
24. He's just so good. We've seen how good he is. I mean, this year, notwithstanding, he's just been riddled with injuries. He's just too good for me to say, no, I'm going to move on.
Yeah, I think the one question, and Ridley Truther even says this in the comments, that it's a little concerning that he already has multiple injuries and he's almost, I don't want to say he's going down the path of like Julio or DeAndre Hopkins, because those guys didn't really start going down this path until they were, late 20s, early 30s. But it almost seems like this, and maybe it corrects itself this season and he's fine going forward. But it kind of seems like he may go down that path of where it's just like always banged up. You know what I mean? Plays through it. Don't get me wrong. He plays through most of the injuries. But, I mean, you saw that with Julio Jones for the last 2 years and then Hopkins all year this year. Finally he had an injury that actually took him out. You know what I mean? He saved us all from starting him and he, re-injures the hamstring during the game. Like you'd rather him just sit out.
And look, and even just having that injury-prone label hurts their value when you're trying to trade them away. Like even if they produce like Julio did as a top 3 wide receiver for most of his career.
Yep.
Most of those years you couldn't get that in trade because people would go, well, he doesn't score touchdowns and he's always injured. And you're like, well, that's a little oversimplified for what's going on, but that was the prevailing view.
Yep. Well, we had another question earlier I wanted to make sure we get to. Zachary Linton on Twitter said, discuss T. Higgins, rest of season and dynasty value. Thoughts?
Well, we've talked about this before. I don't know if Zach knows that or not, but I'm a big T. Higgins guy. No, he's never going to be the wide receiver one on his own offense, not as long as he plays with Jamar Chase. But I still think he can still be a low end wide receiver. Low end wide receiver one, high end wide receiver two. I still think he's got that, and I think he can give you wide receiver 1 weeks. Ton of targets, right? He's actually out targeted Jamar Chase on the season. I think that is incorrect.
Not total targets, but if you just isolate the games that he's played and you look at his market share, that's the numbers people quote. Like you can't count the games he didn't play. Obviously, he's not going to get any targets, so his overall market share is going to look a little flawed. But yeah, I mean, he's
20% target share, and he missed 2 games.
Yeah, it's adjusted to like 24%, which is slightly higher than Chase in the same games. So, I mean, you have that going for him. My argument against Higgins is exactly what you said, though. Like, he's not the best receiver on his team. So there's always going to be another guy that's probably getting the same market share at least. So if it ever starts to spread out among more players, you're probably more worried for him than you are for Chase. You know what I mean? Because he's less efficient with what he does with his targets. He also doesn't get the cheap targets either. That's something I mentioned before. Like, he doesn't get the end arounds. He doesn't get the bubble screens. He doesn't get the targets where it's like we're trying to get the guy going. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He gets a lot of his targets are, I don't want to say lower percentage, but it seems like a lot of his targets are, sideline outs that are contested catches or catches in traffic where he's taking a hit. I mean, it just seems less sustainable. And obviously Chase has a home run ability that, Chase can go for 60 over the top at any point, and that Higgins can't do that. It'd be different if that's all Chase was. But Chase also gets all the same type of targets Higgins does. So it's hard to think he's ever more than a wide receiver 2 there. My argument for Higgins is I think there's a very good chance he's out after 2023.
Right.
And he's basically like an alpha profile prospect that would hit free agency at 24. We don't see that hardly ever. I think the last one we saw was like Sammy Watkins.
He certainly does not count.
Well, no, but I mean that it would be the same type of level player hitting free agency. Allen Robinson would be another one, and Higgins is probably a better prospect than Allen Robinson was. So it's like I think it's a very good comparison of like Chris Godwin hitting free agency this year. Even though Godwin's produced a little better than Higgins, how will Godwin be viewed in free agency this year? I think he'll be sought after, but I don't think people have this vision that he's going to be a top 5 receiver. I think that's already gone. He's where Higgins will be in 2 years, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
I got you.
So.
No, look, if you can get Higgins cheap, which you probably can, because most people are disappointed with him in your leagues. They're looking at his per game score and go, oh, he's only scoring basically 12 points a game. That's not great. He's never going to surpass Chase. No, he's not going to surpass Chase. I think his scoring will pick up. I'm a little less concerned about someone coming in and stealing targets from them because he's already, they had Boyd there. So if there's a player that's good enough to steal targets, it would be Boyd. And he's at least surpassed Boyd. And if Boyd ever leaves, well, then those targets, obviously, I guess they could bring in someone, but I don't imagine that it would be anyone as good as Boyd, who has been awful this year, numbers wise, but is still a very good wide receiver.
Yeah, I think it's more of just right now you're kind of living on the fact that the Bengals only use 5 players, essentially. They basically use Mixon, Uzama, and the 3 receivers. They've really, and Auden Tate's been hurt for the last 5 games. They really don't work in anybody else. You might see 1 or 2 targets or receptions to one of the other receivers, like Stanley Morgan or Mike Thomas or someone like that. But they don't bring in other guys, even in games where, Dallas, for instance, has Gallup, Lamb, and Cooper. You'll still see 4 targets go to Noah Brown or Cedric Wilson in those games, and they use 2 running backs where they target. So, I think that's the beauty about the Bengals offense is they don't have to throw the ball a lot and you can still capitalize on, a 25% market share, even for their wide receiver too. So I'm just saying if that ever changed, say they added another tight end or they added another running back that was a legit pass catcher, you know what I mean? It could slowly siphon the targets away. And you'd probably say that if all the volume became less concentrated, I'd be more worried about Higgins than Chase. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Chase can still probably put up his numbers on 2% less targets, whereas Higgins, he needs every piece that he can get.
Yeah, Higgins is definitely of the 2. He is the I hate using this term. He's the beta there, so he's going to be the one more affected by outside extenuating circumstances than Chase would, because Chase is just that good that any offense is going to be built around him first.
Yep. Well, let's see. We had one more. It was another question by Philip. You've been buying this guy, Shane. CEH. Yeah. Although you wouldn't give me a 23 first for him the other day. Well, you kept pushing back.
We've talked about 23 first. That's just ridiculous. You're not getting one of those. If it was a 2022 first, which I don't have, you could have had that. But no, there's a lot of hope for CEH. Look, he just came back and played pretty high snap share. He's not going to be what we wanted him to be. Let's just put that out there. When he was being drafted 4th overall in startup drafts or top 6 or whatever ridiculousness it was, when we as a community, me included, made him the 101 in drafts over Jonathan Taylor quite decisively, we had visions that CEH would be 1,700 yard guy a year. I think that's what we all saw. We saw him probably rushing for 900 yards and having another 800 yards receiving. That's not going to happen. He's going to give you some RB1 weeks. You know what he kind of reminds me of now is Josh Jacobs, but not dead-legged.
Dude, we're sharing a brain. I was just going to say he has probably the career trajectory of Josh Jacobs where he's going to get touches. And
exactly. If he can scale up to 4 receptions a game, I think I'd be ecstatic. But I think he's always going to be the first and second down back in Kansas City. That's what it looks like. And then you just hope he gets some work in the receiving game and scores some touchdowns. He at worst, to me, he's probably RB 16-ish. Which, again, isn't bad when you take out the context of, we drafted this guy to be what Jonathan Taylor is. And then you see what Jonathan Taylor is doing.
Yeah, I think the comparison to Jacobs is pretty apt because everyone was out on Jacobs after 2 years, basically saying Jacobs actually averaged 280 touches per 14 games in his first 2 years. So he was like a bell cow. He got more work than almost anybody. He was one of 6 guys in the NFL. I remember this because I did the research in the offseason. He was one of 6 guys in the NFL that averaged 20 touches a game for his first 2 years. And the other names, they didn't even do it in their first 2 years, but the other names are like Zeke, Mixon, McCaffrey. Like they're all the elite stud running backs that you all envision as bell cows. But you don't put Jacobs in there because it's like, he didn't live up to how high he was taken in drafts. You know what I mean? He was like the RB1, the 101 with N'Keal Harry, 2019, and he just hasn't been like super great. But I think his value dropped enough last year where if you could just accept that he's probably never going to be anything higher than like RB10 in a season, you could have got a deal on him because you could get him for less than a first. And I think you can do that with CEH too, and just realize you're not getting a ceiling. You know what I mean? And I think the one thing with Jacobs is he always got goal line touches. So you could always bank on him for touchdowns. And he started to get more catches this year. He's basically become like a dump off king this year. You know what I mean? He's going to probably end up with like 40 plus catches this season. They're not worth a lot, but hey, that's a point in a PPR league. So that's all you complained about before was all he didn't get. Yep. He didn't get catches. Now he's getting, 4 catches for 18 yards. But that's what he pretty much does. And you'll take that. That's an extra 5 points a game. So, and I just wanted to say that I think the security with CEH is actually a lot higher than we think. He's a first round pick, right? He's probably going to be locked in his role for at least another 2 years, if not 3, if they pick up his 5th year option. Now, do you pick up 5-year options on running backs? You probably shouldn't. But you know what? NFL teams like their guys, and they probably don't mind paying a running back. I think last year the 5th year option was like $8.5 million or something like that. Like they probably don't hate picking up a 5th year option on a guy they like. You know what I mean? So Jacobs may have the same role for 2 more years. And if you can buy 2 years of RB15 production at less than that price, then I think that's actually worth buying when everybody else is pivoting off. So T-Law, Shane, post Urban firings. I think Phillips assuming Urban's getting canned. I'm not so sure.
Yeah, I still believe in Trevor Lawrence as a prospect, right? We were talking about this a little earlier in one of our chats, and we brought up Peyton Manning. Peyton Manning threw 26 interceptions or 28 interceptions in his rookie year.
28.
And then he threw another 20 this following year. And then it got down to like 14 or whatever. And yeah, the interception rates were higher back then. Shout out to Run DFF for showing that interception rates have gone down dramatically. But either way, 26 is a lot of interceptions. It's not just bad coaching. It's the fact that Marvin Jones is your wide receiver 1. That's not great. You know what I mean? The fact that Jamal Agnew was your most targeted wide receiver is horrible. The fact that Dan Arnold is a vital piece of your offense is just awful. You have to think it's going to improve, right? It has to improve. If by no other reason than accident, Urban's going to have to draft a wide receiver or a tight end or maybe Dan Arnold's fine as a tight end if you have actual wide receivers on your team. Trevor Lawrence is too good for me to think that he's not going to be able to overcome this. And then, there is the ultimate trump card. You can only hope and pray that Shad Khan goes, oh, what the hell did I do? Urban Meyer hasn't been fired yet, and then fires him.
Yeah, he hasn't been good this year. But like you said, maybe that's part of it being a lot of rookies usually struggle anyway, like you said. If you just use like PFF grades or if you look at some of the other numbers, looking at just like average throw depth, right? So you're just looking at like ADOT for quarterbacks. Lawrence actually has been super inefficient. He's one of the least efficient quarterbacks, the lowest graded quarterback per PFF, but he's still throwing it at like the 11th highest ADOT. So he's not out there trying to manufacture efficiency. He's basically just been let go to do whatever, he would be doing if he had real weapons. And like you said, he doesn't have real weapons. So I kind of like some of the peripherals about Lawrence. If people are trying to say he's a bad quarterback, I think that's false. But I think the concern is legit by Phillip. Like if Urban doesn't get fired and they just try to run this back next year, I'm sure they're going to get another couple weapons, right? Like they're not going to just stay with what they have, right? They're going to add guys. But are you worried a little bit if Urban comes back and they try to just run back the same system next year,
Absolutely terrified. If Urban comes back next year and they go, really the only problem was experience. Yeah, we're going to run it back with Marvin Jones, and we're going to let DJ Chark walk. I'd feel a lot better if DJ Chark was there, to be honest with you. I
actually think they talked about DJ Chark being a priority for them to re-sign. So that would be interesting if he were to come back.
Look, DJ Chark is not a wide receiver 1 on an offense, but I think he's a good wide receiver 2 on an offense, or at least a weapon. If Chenault could then be used as the Debo light, because he's not as good as Debo, and then you get a legitimate wide receiver 1 in there, maybe David Bell. I don't know. I'd be pretty stoked. But if they run it back with the same setup, same offensive coordinator, same Urban, same position players, and really the only difference is adding Travis Etienne, I'm going to be a little concerned, probably very concerned.
So real quick, would you be buying DJ Chark?
I don't. There's too many questions for me to buy him for the cost that it would. I could get Christian Kirk for a second.
Would you pay a playoff second in a super flex for Chark right now, just to stash for next year? Would you rather have the flexibility of the pick?
I think I'd hold on to the pick. Yeah, I like Chark, but there's way too many question marks coming back from injury, and I don't know where he's going to be. And if he is back in Jacksonville, are they going to actually use him correctly, which apparently is a problem because Urban Meyer doesn't know how to use football players, as you could tell from his Laviska Shenault quote today.
Would you buy Shenault or sell Shenault?
I think I would buy Shenault only because it seems like Urban has finally gotten the point, right? That, hey, if Laviska is going to be a gadget player, use him like a gadget player, and that includes backfield, some backfield touches, which he
But do you sell in the next 36 hours because Urban said that before you actually get out there and he has another 4 for 24 game? Or
no,
what?
Because I think Urban does learn, right? We talked about this before with James Robinson, right? Like he wanted to work Carlos Hyde in there, and then he saw it in reality and was like, oh no, this is terrible. Like all of us knew that beforehand, as most sentient humans or anyone with a thinking brain would have known Carlos Hyde is trash. Just give the touches to James Robinson. He had to see it, right? So he saw it, and then he finally was like, okay, James Robinson's going to get all the touches. So now that he saw with his own eyes in person what it looks like when you can use a gadget type player, I think he's going to start using Laviska that way. But again, this is all just speculation. And trading Laviska right now is going to get me what? Second, maybe.
Oh, so I was going to say, if you can re-roll your second for, if anyone checked out the Dynasty and Chill I did with Shane Hallam, he has 10 receivers going on day 2 of the NFL draft. If I told you would get the wide receiver 8 next year, that was a late second round pick. Forget who it is. We don't even know who it is, what their profile looks like, what their situation. Do you take that guy over Shenault right now? Probably like the 208-ish?
No, I'll take Shenault.
You'd rather have Shenault?
Yeah. Okay. I've seen Shenault actually be good on the football field. As much as I wasn't a supporter of his, he actually flashed more than a few times last year. And he had that one game this year. Remember when Urban Meyer used him as an actual receiving weapon deep when Chark got injured, and he looked great. And then they immediately went away from that the next game and started, his A-dot went back to 2. But
yep.
Yeah.
Well, we got one more. This is Iron Never Lies. He's got a trade for you, Shane. I'm assuming this is super flex just because it has a quarterback involved. But we got Keenan Allen, Darrell Henderson, and Cam Newton for Antonio Gibson, Rashad Bateman, and a 3rd rounder. So I'm assuming, let's just say 12 teams start 10. What side do you like there?
The thing is, Keenan Allen, Henderson, and Cam Newton, you can plug in right now, right?
That's like a title running. Yeah, that's like a title running for trade right there. There's
not many rosters in any league that you can't go, all 3 of these guys are starters. Man, I love Bateman.
Gibson or Henderson?
I guess in theory, Gibson, right?
I think rest of the season, they're probably pretty neutral, maybe a little bit of an edge to Henderson. I think rest of the year.
I don't know. I still give a heavy edge to Henderson rest of the year because at least he's on an offense where we know they'll throw him the ball, and not often, but when they do throw the ball to the running back, it's going to be him, assuming he's on the field and healthy.
So advantage Henderson rest of the year. Would you say when the calendar flips, though, it'll be advantage Gibson from a dynasty perspective, though, because of Akers?
By a lot. Yeah, by a lot.
Okay. And then Keenan Allen versus Bateman. I think that's pretty close, don't you think?
If we're looking at production, no. Bateman's all hope and wishes. I love Bateman.
I don't know, man. You've seen what Elijah Moore's done in the last month.
We do that. Look, I'd love to see that from Bateman, so I can know that all these things that I'm saying about him are going to one day come to fruition, or at least have reason to believe. Because I keep beating the drum, like, oh no, it's coming. He's getting targets. This is the week. This is the week, and this might be the week because Marquise Brown's going to be out again. Yeah, long term, it's Gibson, Bateman, and I'm assuming that's a 3rd round pick, which I don't really care about. But it's good that you got that thrown in. If I'm going for a title run, I hate being this guy. I definitely like the Keenan Allen, Henderson, and Cam Newton side because that is a title run move right there. And that's knowing that, all right, I'm losing this long term, but that's okay.
Yeah, and check out our Dynasty Trades in 5. We talked about Cam Newton, and that was before he went out and had a pretty solid game, QB1 game last week in his first start. Maybe we'll do a Manic and chill on this as we get closer to the offseason, but I actually think that some of these quarterbacks right now that we've kind of written off as being like, yeah, they're going to lose their jobs after this year. I think they're a lot more viable to start next year than probably their value reflects. And I think Cam is one of those. Like, you might not be able to buy him as cheap as you could last week, but I still think you can get Cam for a second and could be worth it if he ends up starting more than a season. Just a second alone, that's easily worth it if you get another year's worth of starts out of it. So good question. Kind of with you. I'm kind of with you, Shane. Like, if I'm going for the title, it's not like Keenan Allen and Henderson are dead after the year. I'd just prefer Bateman and Gibson. So if you can stomach it, have a little more volatile of a roster going into the offseason, then I'm good with it. One more. Joe A. Bear, are you trying to buy low on Terrace Marshall? Apparently Joe is. What say you, Shane?
Do you assume, first of all, that Joe is French-Canadian? He's from the Bayou? Is that why he's A. Bear and not Herbert?
Does he know Justin?
Maybe.
It's Justin Herbert versus Justin A. Bear, so I don't know.
And then if you're old like us, what was it, Bobby A. Bear? Wasn't that
Bobby A. Bear, yep.
Yeah. Sure. I buy low on most players, but what do you consider?
What's a buy low, though?
Yeah, I'll give you a 3rd for him because you paid.
You wouldn't pay a late second?
Nah, I'm good.
Okay, then you're not getting him.
No, then
you're not going to buy him for a 3rd.
That's fine. He can sit out there. He's done absolutely nothing. We've talked before, if no one's ever heard us talk before, but wide receivers that bust in their first year are not a good investment. And I mean, look, he's still got 7 more games where he could change that narrative. I don't think Cam's the guy that's going to turn that around for him, though. Cam seems to be more of a, I'm going to get the ball to DJ Moore and CMC and Robbie Anderson if he happens to run across my face.
Yeah, I'm very torn on Terrace Marshall because what I said about him in the offseason was he had the profile that if he came out and produced as a rookie, his value could have exploded. But of course, he's come out and done very little as a rookie. The concerning thing for me is twofold. One, you've seen Robbie Anderson draw all these inefficient, empty, crappy targets, right? Why couldn't Terrace Marshall draw 20% of those? You know what I mean? That's what's kind of concerning. I know he had a concussion. He missed a couple games. He is a rookie. The positives are he was a younger rookie. So he is still, if you just erase his rookie year, which I know we can't do, we can't just say, well, he didn't play this year. He didn't only get, 28 targets in 15 games or whatever he might end up getting. He's still, if you put him side by side with some of the guys that we're going to value very highly in next year's draft, he's still going to look like a better profile than them, right? So like you put him side by side with some guys next year, someone like Wan'Dale Robinson that's going to come out, he's going to be early 22-year-old, didn't break out until basically he was 20. Terrace Marshall's profile side by side is going to look similar to him. Yet I think most people would say they'd rather have the guy they haven't seen fail, like you said. But he failed at not even 21 and a half years old. So do we give him a pass? Because literally he could be back in college right now, dominating.
He could.
And we would be saying, oh my gosh, this guy's a first-round pick next year. Meanwhile, we're going to cast him off, and you said you would only buy for a 3rd. So you're basically saying you have you'll take 12 receivers next year over him probably with what you just said, right?
Yep.
Okay. Yep. I guess that's Dynasty. That's Dynasty valuation on receivers, right? The face planners.
If you have a bunch of seconds and you're feeling spunky, go ahead and send one out for Terrace Marshall. But like I said, just because of the history of what we've seen with first-year wide receivers not producing and how it's impacted their career going forward, look, I know 11 games is a little soon to be calling it for someone, but it doesn't look great right now.
Well, I mean, there were people buying low on Denzel Mims, Brian Edwards, and Jalen Reagor. And Now you're selling as low as you can just to get something. Anything you could use towards something else probably on those guys.
Yeah,
So.
I just dropped an article today on DLF about those three, talking about sophomore wide receivers. And what's great though is they do still have some name cachet. Their name carries a little bit of value in some leagues. I'm not sure why, but that's. But if you want to be able to trade Terrace Marshall next year for whoever next year's Alex Collin is, sure.
I think the key is don't learn from the mistakes from last year. If there is a pocket of time, let's say Terrace Marshall doesn't do much in the next 6 games and he lands his rookie year completely disappointing. There may be a window where some big name in the industry hypes him up, or some puff piece comes out from the Panthers about how he's making huge strides. Remember the Bryan Edwards hype this year? He looks like an alpha. He's going to get the opportunity. That's when you sell, right? That's the time to sell before there's any exposure on the field. So
yep. When it's hardest to sell, when it's going, well, everyone's telling me blah, 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 blah. I'm just going to buy into the narrative. Just look at the history of it and go, you know what? It's something around 60-70% of these guys are going to fail. I'll just take my chances and trade all of them. Maybe I'll get lucky and hit on Michael Pittman, but I'm more likely to end up with Jalen Reagor, Bryan Edwards, and Denzel Mims on my roster.
Yeah, well-timed comment. Joe chimed in while we were talking. Boom. Pittman broke the first-year bust script, and Pittman was a 4-year receiver too, so that's actually like a year down the road from Terrace Marshall. That would technically be like Terrace Marshall's 3rd year.
Right.
So yeah, you're right. There are still outliers. That doesn't mean you expect it to happen, but I've changed my tune on Pittman now, where if I can buy him, then I'm pretty convinced that he has a floor of being decent. You know what I mean? Like I'm not buying anything that's going to completely tank. I think his market share will be affected because he's still only drawing like a 24% market share with nobody else. But I think he's at least a wide receiver 3 going forward with wide receiver 2 seasons in him. And that's fine to pay probably what his market price is.
Yep.
All right, last one. This is right up your alley, Shane. I'm just going to post
that about the last 6.
Yeah, but you know what? They keep coming in, and we're going to go for an hour. So can you hang in there for 8 more minutes?
All right.
Boom. Right here. John 02. There you go. Jalen or Javonte?
Man, these two. What sucks, right, is after the draft, I had these guys basically in the same bucket. Since then, pretty much the same bucket. I don't know. I'll go with Javonte because I think he shows whatever it is. He has that wide receiver 1 thing about him. I don't know what you would call that. It's not very analytical.
It's called the it factor.
The it factor. I think Javonte's got the it factor where I don't think Jalen does. I think Jalen's a very good player. I don't understand how the Dolphins are using him right now. He's getting a ton of targets. They're just low leverage ones where 4 or 5 yards for whatever reason. And Javonte is he's got more big play in him. And he's just, you can't guard him. Like, honestly, just watch the tape. I'm not a tape guy, but just watch cornerbacks trying to cover Devonta Smith. It's freaking hilarious. Like, they get washed so bad. So I'll go Devonta, but honestly, it's not like it's a slam dunk. Like, if you offered me Jalen Waddle in a second for Devonta Smith, I'd probably take it. If you offer me Devonta Smith and a third for Jalen Waddle, whatever side I have, I'll probably lean towards.
Yeah, so Shane basically is going to be biased on whatever side. You need to get what do I call it, Shane? You need the leverage back if you're making the trade, right? Like you need the kicker on your side, regardless of who the player is, for you to do the deal. So the Eagles are the run heaviest team in the league the last 5 games.
Of course they are.
Like a ridiculous amount of runs.
Yeah, they're balling.
And they're winning. So what if they make the playoffs and they run this back next year and they just bring in another running back? They use 3 or 4 backs. Even though Devontae and Goddard are getting the market share so you can still start them, does it worry you a little bit that another one of Devontae's prime cheap years could be, I don't want to say even stuck, but just kind of, I guess the word is stuck in this type of offense. And like, does that worry you a little bit? Were you more excited for Javonte if they would have like hit the reset button on a more of a pass heavy or open up offense versus what they may be going with right now? Does that concern you at all as an Eagles fan?
I mean, so there's always the chance that they could have opened up to a more pass heavy offense that was just bad, right? So at least this pass offense is efficient, and it's him and Dallas Goedert getting all the targets. Like they've pretty much, that's it. It's those two getting targets. If anyone else gets a target, it's because one of them happens to be not on the field because their shoe came off or something. Like it literally, I think him and Goddard are 50% of the market share for that team. And also, there's got to be some regression to that run game, right? You can't have every running back on your roster averaging 5 yards a carry, can you? I mean, I guess you can, but it just doesn't seem possible to me. We know they're not going to go wide receiver again, no matter what. So I'm okay with this offense. I'm good with this offense.
You don't think?
Would I prefer that he be in, an offense where they're throwing 35 times a game, 40 times a game, and they're efficient? Yeah. But considering some of the other alternatives, I'm fine with this offense. He's not going to see 15 targets, but he's going to see 7 to 8 targets, and he's probably going to haul in most of those receptions.
See, I actually think that if they choose to bring back Hurts, then, which they're going to bring him back, he's going to be on the roster. But if they don't go with another quarterback, I actually think there's a really good chance they go with another receiver with one of their picks.
I just don't. I mean, honestly, with those 3 picks, first of all, someone brought up a good point today that I didn't even think of. There's a good chance they're trading one of those picks because you don't want to have to pay three guys after their contract's up. If you hit on all 3 of those guys in the first round, to have those contracts all come up at the same time would bankrupt your roster. That defense needs a lot of work. I got to imagine. Look, if you can win with, apparently you can win with Jalen Hurts, a monster running game, Devonta Smith, Dallas Goedert, and Quez Watkins, to be quite honest with you. Like, that's enough to win.
Yeah. It'll be interesting. That Eagles with their 3 firsts, Hurts, that's going to be a really interesting situation to follow the rest of the year. How do they finish out the year? They're rolling the last month. If it continues and they win and they make the playoffs, it's going to be hard for them to say, we're not going to try to build on this. Because I know I've seen a lot of people coming out of the woodwork the last week or two, comparing, like, I think Jalen Hurts has finally hit close to a full season worth of games now. And the numbers actually don't look that bad compared to a lot of other rookies. Yet we've almost already given up on him like he's a bust, even though he hasn't even started for a full year. So that'll be one interesting to follow going forward. We have a lot of other questions, Shane, but we're not going to have time to get to them. So maybe we'll do another episode here in the next week or two.
Definitely.
There's one I see in the coffer that talks about Dawson Knox, and I want to just pop that up here and go for like another 15 minutes. But we might be having a show. We talked about Dawson Knox, right? What is that again? Let's plug it.
That's a Dynasty Trades in 5. You can find that on the YouTubes, and it's exactly what it sounds like. We talk about Dynasty Trades in 5 minutes, specific players, and Dawson Knox was definitely one that we just covered. I don't remember if it's out yet.
It's not out, but we already recorded it. I shouldn't out Clay like that. But yeah, we recorded it yesterday, and it will be out, I believe, tomorrow, I think, is when it'll post. But yeah, it's talking about Dawson Knox, how we value him compared to the other elite tight ends. And I'll just throw a little bit of a teaser. Yes, we probably think he's undervalued compared to, some of the other guys that hold a little bit more name cachet. So we'll go ahead and end it here. We've been going for an hour. Again, check out the 30% off discount for Black Friday from DLF. Ryan McDowell, he tweeted it off of his Twitter, but it's also on the DLF Twitter. There's a code in there where you can get 30% off of a year subscription, a bunch of tools, the Trade Finder, the Trade Analyzer, the ADP, and much, much more. Shane, close us out.
All right. That he's at Charles Chill FFB. I'm at Shane is the Worst on the Twitters. He hosts Dynasty and Chill. I co-host Dynasty Trades HQ. He also co-hosts Chasing the Helmet. I also co-host Fantasy Intervention live stream. We both co-host Dynasty Trades in 5 on YouTube. So subscribe to that. Make sure you subscribe to the DLF YouTube channel. And if you didn't get a question in, feel free to leave one in the comments, and Scott will make sure he hits that up.
Yeah, definitely. I'll ask Shane his opinion and make sure he responds to it. So appreciate everybody at DLF Football on Twitter, myself and Shane will go ahead and sign off. Happy week 12. Good luck this week, everybody.
Happy Hanukkah.